Everyone. We have Ondy Willson and we have Getting to Know Your Mind today. And I just wanted to make a note, if when we go into groups, if anybody doesn't want to do a group, you certainly don't have to. We'll just go on break for that 15 minutes and then you can just come back. So, because I lost a couple people last week because I think they didn't.
No, we did. We frightened them off.
Yes.
They went, oh, no, I look terrible.
Yeah, so you don't have to participate. You can just come back in 15 minutes when I do that.
Yeah, thank you, Alexis. I reminded myself to mention that as well. And this week we do have a couple of exercises. So if people don't want, it's better if they join a group for everyone, discussion is useful. But if they really don't want to, then they can have a look at those exercises in that 15 minutes and come back. Where, as you said, we don't want to lose people. Yeah, from the whole thing. So anyway, thank you for being here. Lovely to see you all. Thank you. And this week we're moving on. I've got a little presentation and then some documents with some information on. And Venerable Dondrup tells me that there's a link on my events page, I presume, unless it's, I don't know, where you can download everything. So you can download the past presentations, which don't necessarily tell you a lot, but there are recordings as well. And then the documents, as I said, which are quite useful as exercises, you can download from this week. So if you are in that 15-minute slot on your own, you could go there and have a go at one of them. Yeah. Okay, so we usually start with a nice little mindfulness meditation just to bring us into the present moment and to think about what we're doing here and why before I start a talk and presentation. Okay. So just relax into your space. Some lovely deep breaths. Find a comfortable posture. And then just turn your attention to some breathing meditation. Allowing your belly to fill and empty. Lovely, long, luxurious breaths. Letting the day go. Or letting the night go. And just feeling fresh in the moment, ready to enjoy, open your mind and your ears to some wonderful Dharma teachings. And whatever the time of day it is where you are, just think why you're making this effort, because it's an effort. There are so many other distractions, things we could be doing. Why have you come to this session? What do you hope to gain from it? What is your motivation? Be very clear. And then when you're ready, you can end your short meditation. Just put the presentation up now. I seem to have lost you all now. How have I done that? When I put the presentation up, I'm losing you. So I'm going to try that again. Maybe I didn't do share screen. I don't think I did. That's better. That's better. Okay. Okay, so we've had a couple of weeks in considering the nature of the mind, what it is we're dealing with, in particular, the differences and the relationship between the brain and the mind. And I suppose that's the most important thing. If you've just popped in this week, no idea of any of your levels of knowledge of Buddhism. So this is just to underline and for us to remember and recall that Buddhism sees these as being very different. And the mind is also known as the mental continuum, which describes it very well in that it is like a stream of consciousness. So there's nothing permanent about it. It's changing, and its scope and its qualities are that it's indestructible, its energy, and that it's beginningless and endless, which is kind of mind-blowing, literally. So it's recognizing that because of its scope and qualities, it is in a state of change, and that if we engage with the brain, literally, we engage our minds with the brain, we can actually change our tendencies and habits and redirect our brain or direct our brain into any direction we wish. So that's kind of been the content of what we've been doing, is to really see how much power we have in this situation of being a human being with this large, incredible, magnificent, rational brain that we can work with. Okay, so understanding what it is one thing, and then we're kind of moving on to how do we get to know it? Because in daily life, we're very external beings. We're very stimulated through the senses. I mean, right now I'm sitting here, I'm looking around my room, I can smell my dinner, which I've cooked in the kitchen. I'm sitting in a comfortable chair. All these things take us and make us feel very solid. So if we want to know our minds, we've really got to engage in a specific way, because we're going inside. Yeah. So we all know through meditation, that is literally to turn inwards. So that's the method, that's the main method we use to know our minds. But in meditation, we can often get distracted by compulsive thoughts. So thoughts and emotions are just coming up. We got no control over them. They're just coming up. So I can be sitting here looking very serene, as if I'm completely with you guys. And actually I'm thinking about what I'm going to watch on TV later. You know, nobody has any idea what's going on. And I can be sitting here thinking, oh my God, you know, where am I? Where did I go? Where did I go? So our attention goes, it drifts off, it defocuses. Or I might be very tired and it gets kind of really fuzzy. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh, this is nice. I'm just going to kind of nod off here. Yeah. So those are the two main obstacles in meditation. And it's because actually, you know, we are such externalized beings, where we put our energy and what we do with our lives, that to turn inwards is still, even though it's a popular thing to do now, it's still unusual. Yeah. And if we're living an ordinary life, and by that I mean like a householder, we've got jobs to do, we've got relationships to deal with, we've got cleaning, shopping, gardens, blah, de, blah, de, blah. If we've got all that stuff going on, then, very easy to get distracted. And also, we're not going to spend that concentrated time that really these teachings were initially given for, because they weren't given initially to lay people. They were given to monks and nuns in monasteries, who were going to spend a lot of time meditating. That was their job. Our job will be very different. Most of us will have very different kinds of jobs. So to actually find the time to meditate, it's not so easy to do that. So we need to recognize how important meditation is and make that time. And then when we do go inwards, use all the knowledge we have of what meditation is meant to be doing in order to know the mind. The first one is we take the aspect of the observer. Now, the observer, again, and all of you have probably meditated, but just to recap quickly, is that observer is that quiet inner voice, that awareness that we access when we meditate. So it's not the compulsive chatter, it's the voice that notices the compulsive chatter. It's the awareness. When I say voice, it might be a come back, or where you're going, or it might be just an awareness which brings you back to your breath. So we call that the observer. So that's how we get to know our minds, is really strengthening the position and the awareness of that observer, so that when we go into meditation, they're there, they're policing us. They're going, whoop, where are you going? You don't need that, come back. And then that becomes a very constructive habit. So that's why it's important, because if we just sit and think, I'll do some breathing, without that observer, the meditation will go off in one direction or another. So the observer's important. So meditation is important, and the observer is important. The next thing is, what is the observer doing? It's observing the content of our mind. So what that observer is able to do, as well as bringing us back to the breath, and to bring us back to mindfulness, or to bring us back on the focus of our of any particular meditation, whether that be a stabilizing meditation or an analytical one, it's getting to know the kind of stuff that goes on in your mind. Yeah. Now, this is when we start to think, crikey, I'm always thinking about this, or I'm always putting myself down. Or, I've got very low self-esteem, but why am I being so negative? The content of our minds. This is when the observer comes in to not only check the drift, but to notice the content of your mind. Now you're really getting to know your mind. Now, when we do that, we are then able, off the cushion, to kind of, in our life, notice when similar thoughts are coming up. When do I get low self-esteem? What makes me negative? So that is what, lovely Venerable Rabina would say is, well, Lama Yeshe, actually, you become your own therapist, And this is totally true. It's like, whoa, look at me thinking this. But with the relationship, the observer is like the counselor. Yeah. And the client is the chattery ego mind. And they're within us. They're both within us. So what we're doing is recognizing You know how long it takes for some people to actually go to counselling? My friend was telling me the other day, what was it she said? She said, people go to counselling because the people who really need counselling don't go. And I thought that was brilliant because, yeah, you know, there's some real hard and fast egos out there going, there's nothing wrong with me, okay? And then the rest of us are going to counselling or to our therapist. So, you know, we have actually engaged. We've gone, okay, there's definitely stuff going on here. There's definitely stuff going on here. And I need to kind of counsel myself. So that's the other role, if you like, of the observer. Now, I think personally that if you are a great yogi or yogini, and you're doing loads of meditation, then the meditation will be sorting that out. There'll be purification and all that going on. But I think, again, personally, because this is my experience as a householder, as a parent, etc., 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 that actually being off the cushion and using that counsellor in our daily life is a really important aspect for lay people. Yeah, because that's really the content of our life. Yeah, so to engage with the content of our life and allow it to be our teacher is going to be the majority of what we do, unless we go into retreat or we enter certain periods where we do a lot of meditation. Okay, so that's how we get to know our minds. We get to know what's driving us. Within all that, there will be spaciousness. And the important thing about the spaciousness that we find between thoughts and emotions is to be comfortable there. Because the reason we have compulsive thoughts is because the ego is frightened of not existing. It's frightened of its impermanent nature. So that spaciousness is like, where am I? Who am I? It's, you know, it's that feeling of losing yourself, yeah, which can feel nihilistic. But to feel comfortable in the spaciousness where there's stillness, where there's calm, where there's peace, and to have this sense of it's okay, I'm still here. It, I think, is a really important aspect of when we develop our meditation. And when we find that spaciousness, this strengthens our experience of the inner self, which is kind of in that lovely lotus Buddha, you know, with the light here at the heart level, which you can't really see on my thing, but anyway, you don't need to. When we find that spaciousness, and when we have the presence of that observer, and we're aware of all that, there's this feeling of, yeah, the authentic me, the real me, my Buddha nature is there. Yeah? I can feel it. It's pure, it's awareness itself. It's pure and it's guiding me, and I just need to strengthen my relationship with that inner self so that you start to get like, it's almost like a battle or the ego kind of, you know, pushing up, and the inner strength is, or the inner self is kind of coming like this, and you've got this tension going on. And what we want to do is to kind of get the ego in check and feel comfortable with our Buddha potential, whatever label you want to give it, and therefore more readily draw from that. I mean, this is also where intuition comes in, isn't it? You know, this experience of that inner voice telling you, reminding you, your inner guru, as Lama Yeshe would say. Okay. So mindfulness comes in here because with mindfulness, again, it's the strengthening of the awareness. And what we're doing is we're strengthening our awareness of what is uncomfortable. lovely, comfortable things, lovely relationships, everything lovely, jubbly, you know, that just goes by itself. But it's when things give us problems that they cause a lot of confusion. There's a lot of confusion going on. Am I right? Am they right? Did they mean this, or did I mean this, or do I want this? There's just so much going on there. So what we do with our mindful awareness is we focus on the management of disturbing thoughts and emotions. So that's actually the job. When we know our minds, we get to know what's on it. We notice if there's problem issues, and in order to develop our potential for it and move towards enlightenment, we want to purify the mind, and we want to transform those destructive thoughts and emotions into positive ones. That's where our work lies, really. It's the emotional intelligence, but really through meditation and through the skills that we learn through the Dharma, we're being given all the tricks in the book in order to do that. Yeah. So emotional intelligence for some people may be just in their days, they go, oh, that was a bit nasty, or whatever. Whereas we will go deeper. And because we go deeper, because we're inner beings, because we're principally inner beings if we're practicing Buddhists, we have that relationship which is motivated to purify the mind and take us to enlightenment, not just manage some daily occurrence at work. Yeah. So it's very powerful. So rational observation, well, we know what we're doing with that. We know that we've got this rational part of the brain, and we know that our observer is kind of going, okay, just stand back here. This is going on, that's going on. Don't subjectify this, you know, it's not necessarily to do with you. Just stand back. And what we're using there is, as I've put what I call the reassurance of the inner self. It is, you know, that if you awaken that quiet voice, if you're using wisdom and your inner wisdom and compassion, that it's going to guide you. Okay. So other ways of doing this is, yeah, if you're an artist, we explore, don't we? Through our artwork, through our music, through poetry, through writing, through journaling, through some of the exercises I'm coming up with tonight, which kind of enable us to be reflective, always making sure that we return to our Buddha nature in our meditation to feel that sense of change. Because remember, in Buddhism, that, you know, we hear it, you know, then we think about it, and then we meditate on it. And the meditation is crucial to kind of making that permanent change in ourselves. Okay, so that's roughly it. So what I want to do now gives us plenty of time to have a look at these, which is what I wanted. If there's any questions, we can come back to this later. I'm going to just, I'm going to stop that share, and then I'm going to share my screen with, which one? This one. Okay. Now you won't necessarily get to read all this, but it is downloadable. So if we're focusing on the disturbing emotions, on synonymous or unwholesome, destructive, negative, you know, there's lots of synonyms there, it doesn't matter, they're all the same, then this is something that we can be aware of in our lives. And as I've said, you can download this, so you don't need to, you know, feel like you've got to copy it. And I'll go through it. I'm not going to read every bit, but I'll just go through it. Okay. So this is from Buddhist mind training sources, 6 factors that stimulate disturbing emotions. And what I've got is in brackets is the original Buddhist text, you know, as you can see, bad company, distracting narration. Distracting narration in monasteries was probably, you know, naughty, dirty books or something, I don't know, that the youngsters were passing around amongst them. Now we've got the media. So, you know, it translates easily enough and is just as relevant today as it ever was. So, society, originally called bad company. Now, the main thing with society, I think, is to consider in our lives as lay people that we're going to come into a lot of people who aren't practicing the Dharma. We're going to come into a lot of people who don't have the same political views of us. We're going to come into, you know, there's so many divisions now, more divisions than there ever was, you know, not just racial, cultural. Are you a vaxxer or an anti-vaxxer? In Britain, we've got, are you a Brexiteer or, oh, it's endless, you know. So society, trying to pick our way through what are good influences on us and what are bad influences, because all this is about trying to manage situations where disturbing emotions will come up. So until you can get a handle on them, to be able to be in a group of people. I remember when I was a school teacher and I was a practicing Buddhist, but oh my goodness, some of the people there, I loved their sense of humor, which was very naughty, really, because it was all anti-management, you know. So there were lots of political groups and even groups within departments. It was very hard not to be influenced or take sides because the humor was so sharp and witty. But what you were doing is really being very cynical, you know, being very cynical about people. So it's very hard to be in a group of people like that as a Dharma practitioner and not end up being the same, you know. So it's noticing that, and it's just kind of gently extricating yourself from situations where possibly a lot of negative talk is going on. So what can we do? Yeah, until we develop more stable minds, then keep bad friends close to your heart, but physically a little distance. Good friends bring out the best in us, so cultivate them. That all makes sense. So how do we keep a bad friend close to our heart? We have compassion for them. And we have to watch out that we're not looking down on them. So it's not from a position of pride, but that we recognize that they are the way they are, they think the way they think, they're entitled to, and they're a human being just trying to find happiness like we are. So not easy. So the second factor is what we call media now, and in the monasteries was called distracting narration. Well, we've got loads of stuff going on, fake news going on. What haven't we got going on? Misleading information on the internet. We've got trolling on Twitter and Facebook. I mean, it's vast. The influences of the media virtually shape us now. Our phones are there, we're looking at it. Adverts, subliminal messaging and adverts are coming up. We're just so open to the influence. So, and again, media, you can get involved in unethical thoughts, on wanting others to suffer, or thinking what idiots everybody is, I mean, we are human beings, but it's to be aware, it's to be mindful, yeah? It's to be mindful and generate compassion. And recognize also that whatever there is out there may be truth in it, but there may not. It may literally be there to stimulate us for a particular outcome. So we've got to take a lot of care. And boy, have we got to take a lot of care with our kids who aren't used to being able to be discriminating, and they're getting it thrown at them. So developing a skillful critical attitude is important, but not an uncritical attitude, if that makes sense. So yeah, and the other thing about this is, it says here, also not helpful to stuff our head with useless information. I mean, you know, from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, the first thing you look at and the last thing you look at will possibly be your phone. Certainly will be for a lot of people. And we are filling our heads. So to be very aware of what we're filling our heads with, and give our, you know, turn the phone off occasionally, give ourselves space. If I'm talking mainly to the older generation, then like me, you'll probably be better at this than young people. But to be aware that young people are really being pushed. So the next one is habits, or what was commonly called familiarities. So we're used, you know, if you're used to being cynical, then that's where your mind is going to go. If you often get jealous, that's what your mind, we're familiar. Why are destructive habits, why are destructive thoughts and emotions so difficult? Why can't we just go, oh, that's envy, I won't do that anymore? Why does it keep coming? Because of this continuum, it's been doing that forever. So it's going to take more than just telling it once to stop, for it to end. And they defend our egos. So our ego is there. That's the monster, really, isn't it? It is what we understand in Buddhism as the unhealthy ego, not the healthy sense of I, but this self-grasping, self-cherishing, I am the center of the universe. Everybody should agree with me and do what I say. It's that ego sense. And all these familiarities, negative ways of thinking, are defending that ego. So what can we do? We practice the constructive antidotes, yeah, which I'll come into a bit later, but you'll know. So, you know, for anger, then you practice patience. And remember that these antidotes, they won't be genuine when you start. You won't be used to them. But once you've analysed them and you know they're better, if you have that faith in them through examination and testing them, then you can practice being patient, or practice being kind, or rejoicing if you're jealous. And to begin with, that will be through gritted teeth. But it will become easier, because all you're doing is creating a habit, but it's a good habit. So this is the good news. Eventually we can reach a point where it's easier to develop positive minds than negative minds. Okay, so so the necessary causes and conditions, these are still the factors. This is the fourth factor, is where do they come from? Well, they're latencies, seeds imprinted on our minds, or we have a predisposition. We come into the world and we're an angry little baby. We were angry when we died. Maybe we've been in hell, who knows? Or, you know, maybe we've got a grudge to bear for and we're still carrying it. But we tend towards anger. We've got that seed. The seeds can be there, but not always manifest. Like, you know, I've had people say to me, I don't know why you keep talking about jealousy. I'm not a jealous person. That's because nothing's, you know, nobody's run off with their husband. When somebody runs off with their husband, don't discover their jealousy. Yeah, it's as simple as that. You know, they're there, but they've got until an event arises to stimulate that, it's just going to be there like a little bud, a little bud. David Attenborough, you must worship him the same as the rest of the world. In the UK, he's like one of our treasures. He's doing this thing on plants at the moment, and he was saying that, you know, in the rainforest, there are seeds under the earth that have been there for 100 years. And they can't grow because the rainforest is full of trees. But when a tree eventually dies, falls over, suddenly they start to feel the sunshine and the rain, and they start to grow. Amazing. Yeah, 100 years. So that's just a plant. So we've got no chance. And it's more than 100 years that our seeds or latent seeds have been there. So what can we do? We can weaken by applying an antidote, which I've talked about, and we can do purification practice, which certainly it exists very powerfully in Tibetan Buddhism. And then, that's what we're doing. We're digging away at that seed. Like any weed in the garden, you know how difficult that is to get rid of, to find the roots. It's the tiniest little thing and they'll be back again. So that we're weeding, we're mentally weeding the whole of our lives when we engage in these practices. So destructive emotions cannot arise without meeting an object. So what we do is, if we're trying to manage our disturbing emotions, we try to avoid the object that upsets us. It's a bit difficult if it's a partner. If it's somebody at work, maybe it's easier. Just avoid them. Try not to come into contact with them until your mind's more stable. Because if we have had some kind of run-in, we'll be so as soon as we see them, all that anger will arise. So if we want to stabilize our minds, then don't think, oh, I've got to face it. I've got to face my fear. Just think, well, I'll work on my mind first and get some objectivity, some equanimity, whatever it is that is going to help you handle your attitude to that person or that thing, whatever it is, and then you can manage it better. And finally, inappropriate attention. I mean, these are the causes of destructive emotions. The seed is there, we've got the object, and then we give it inappropriate attention. So we know that if we've had a row with somebody, we obsess about them. We can't get them out of our heads. As soon as we wake up in the morning, we go, oh, there they are. And we start getting angry. That is inappropriate attention. Dwells and exaggerates. Yeah. And it makes it seem like they're solidly that. And you know what that's like. If there's somebody you dislike, I won't name anybody, but there's a few political figures we can point to. And oh my goodness, even looking at them makes you feel ill. We completely give them inappropriate attention and focus on their negative qualities. We don't know them. We've never met them. We're just getting an image. We're just hearing certain things, but we can go down that route. We know that. So deluded attention, incorrect thinking, these are all other terms for inappropriate attention. Incorrect. We don't know the whole. We don't know the why. We don't know any of those things. And yet we project wildly to build up a view of this object that we're angry with. Yeah. And there's that lovely story, isn't there, of the Dalai Lama. Did you watch Kundun, maybe? The film Kundun, and when he's sitting with Chairman Mao and he looks at his, he's had a dream. He sits and looks at their shoes, or he has this really uncomfortable, I can't remember the exact, he has a really uncomfortable meeting with a soldier or one of the military. And then he has a dream, and this person is talking to him about, how they had no food, how they had to eat rats, and it enables him to wake up with great compassion towards them, which he always maintained, regardless of what they did, he still had compassion for the Chinese. So I know he's the Dalai Lama, but there you go. He's our role model. Yeah. He's our role model. Okay. So in general, how we do? Oh, good. We've got good timing. Important to be mindful and alert. Notice when that mind's coming on. Remind yourself. Mindfulness is key. You know, if we practice mindfulness in our meditation and we take that into our everyday life, I'm a great believer in this, that awareness will just enable us to observe and notice and pull us back from saying or doing things, from wrong speech, wrong actions, you know, all the things we're trying to avoid. Meditation helps us soften our views and releases us from strong emotions. And that's a great outcome, just to release and soften. Yeah. So our afflictions don't arise out of nowhere. We know that now. Causes and conditions. Yeah. By developing antidotes and these methods, the little tricks that we've got up here. So this is quite useful to have. Some of you may have seen this before or heard of this, but it's really quite useful to just think, well, you know, I don't have to put myself through the mill here. I can avoid bad company, avoid the media, recognize I've got habits and tendencies. I can avoid the object and I don't have to think about it. It's almost a release, actually, because it's like we're in a neurotic process. The ego has created a neurotic process of actually exaggerating faults because it's so defensive, exaggerating the faults of others, because that's a method to build us up personally. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go there now, and then I'm going to bring up another little one, which is, this is we're getting on to what I'm going to suggest during your group discussion. Is I've got here a kind of umbrella list of emotions. There's loads of emotions. And you can see that, you know, anger varies from rage to just a little bit of annoyance. Still anger. You know, so people say, I never get angry. What they mean is they don't shout and scream, but they could be a seething mess of irritation constantly in their life, going around going everybody else's behavior. And this is interesting. The dictionary definition, an emotion is defined as being any agitation or disturbance of mind, feeling, passion, any vehement or excited mental state. Any. So agitation or disturbance of mind, that's key. So even the constructive emotions agitate our mind. So it's like the mind is like this. And you know, a nice emotion comes and woo, roller coaster. A negative emotion comes along, woo. And that's what we're doing all the time. We're on this roller coaster. So the spaciousness of the mind and meditation and mindfulness are the stabilizing influence. So what we do as practitioners is we aim more for the positive emotions, which aren't things like fun and excitement, although there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. They're positive in that they extend harmony between people. So it's the opposite of causing harm to others. Excuse me. So it's things like compassion and loving kindness and empathy. Yeah, it's those kind of emotions. So we encourage those. But ultimately, when we are aiming for enlightenment, our final meditations would be to destroy all emotions, because ultimately the wisdom that understands the true nature of reality is described as emptiness, and then combines with bodhicitta, the altruistic wish for all beings to be happy and to be free from suffering, compassion. Those are not emotions. Bodhicitta is not an emotion. Compassion in its conventional sense, yes, but wisdom and bodhicitta, then there'll be no emotions. And that does not mean you're, like a zombie, emotionless. As an ordinary person would think, who wants to be a Buddhist? They don't like emotions, Complete misunderstanding, because we go beyond that to this ultimate state, which is enlightenment, full enlightenment. So, excuse me. So there you are. This list of emotions, and I don't know if you're able to do this, but maybe you can talk about them generally. If you are not going to join the discussion groups, you could access this, because what I want you to discuss in your discussion groups is which ones of these are negative, which ones of these are positive. Are there emotions here which can be both? There's just to kind of discuss them. I'm going to stop sharing that for a moment, and then I'm going to show you this, which is, again, you might be aware of tools like this. I've been using these for years. They're quite simple, but they're very effective. This is called the Wheel of Destructive Emotions. So it allows you to just look at this, and you get out your colours. You find your inner child and get out your colours. You don't have to get out your colours, but I like to do it like that. And you just shade them in. So you might go, okay, this one's anger, this one's pride, this one's discontent. And label each one. You might put in your own labels because you think, oh, they haven't got whatever it is you think you have, and it hasn't got that one in, so you can mess with it. And then you just kind of intuitively just go, oh, anger, how much do I get anger, irritated? And you just kind of colour it in, a wedge. And then you might go, well, jealousy, I don't think I have. And you colour it in, and in the end, you've got a pattern, and you'll see which are the emotions that you experience, that visit you most. That's the best way of looking at it. It's what visits you most. And that's the one you focus on working on. You think, right, from now on, because if we have to do all this, we'll be in self-analysis all the time, and we'll get run over or something. So we'll be totally absorbed in looking inside. So we've got to engage with the outer world. So we just focus on one and think, right, the jealousy was my first thing. I noticed it. Jealousy. It's low self-esteem as well. Jealousy comes out of low self-esteem. I learned that. So then you go, right, so I'm going to focus on that. And whenever I see myself looking at other people and think, they're doing this, or they've got that, or she's prettier than me, or whatever it is, you immediately go to, I'm really happy. It'll be totally fake, but you say it. I really want them to be happy. I'm so glad they've got whatever they got. And then after a while, you start to realize that's coming naturally. You're changing the habit, that's all. Such relief. So you may all know about these, but I just find them, it's like the journaling, it's like nice practical ways of doing things, and also just keeping a little bit of distance, because you don't want the focus on working with your disturbing emotions to make you feel bad about yourself. More compassion, more love for yourself. Poor me. I've been going around with this. Oh my God, how did I get this? Poor me. And give yourself big mental hugs and go, right, I can free myself now. Okay, so I'm still not sure how you're going to get these. I'm going to engage with Alexis a bit and say, are you all able to get into groups or not? And either download those and look at them yourselves, or as a group, remember them and discuss them. What do you think is the best way, Alexis?
I was just thinking of how that works. Has everybody been able to download the documents that Ondy was talking about?
I missed
Okay.
it because I was doing something, so I didn't get the link.
Okay, let me see if I can.
Well, the link is meant to be, as Venerable Dondrup said, on my events page. You can download everything.
Where's your events page? Do you have a link to that?
It'll be on your website, won't it?
Yeah,
I don't know what the website is.
it's on the TNL. So if you go to how you got in today to the class,
Okay,
I'm going to
I'll-
try and see if I can get it on here and put it on the chat.
thank
So,
you.
certainly.
I mean, if you can download it, it'll help. But if you can't, I don't see any reason why you still can't be in a discussion group and talk about, kind of go through some of those emotions. I mean, if you want, we can look at the wheel of destructive emotions and you can write them down. I'll recite them and you can write them down. There you go.
So that's the page, that's Ondy's page. And from that point on, you can scroll down to where it says presentations.
Shall we go through the wheel of destructive emotions just as a basic?
I think that's a good idea. We'll just have people write them down, and so that we can just quickly go through that. So we don't have to worry about.
Okay. It's a nice practice to do on your own anyway and take time with it, but it's good to discuss it. So, okay, anger. And that includes irritation, hatred, intolerance, loathing, the whole range. So annoyance and irritation is like the little bit, and that's probably something we can all relate to. It's unlikely that you're running around wielding a hammer or a cleaver, rage, I'm going to kill somebody, but who knows? Anyway, anger. Then there's pride. The important aspects of this is arrogance, feeling superior to others. And I always find as Buddhists that, especially when you start practicing this, you can sure look down on people who aren't practicing and think, gosh, I'm such a superior person. I'm so spiritual. Do these people not know? They're so ignorant. So we have to watch out for pride, I think, as religious practitioners. Discontent. Always thinking, oh, if I do this, oh, I wish I could go here. I wish I could. That mind that is never contented. Jealousy, resentment is part of that, and envy. And you really don't want other people to be happy. You want them to be suffering. Again, we can look at political figures and think, oh my God, I think it'd just be good for them if they suffer for a while. Oh, maybe it would, who knows? Low self-esteem, overemphasizing, having things like guilt, inappropriate humility. Oh, I couldn't possibly do that. Oh, not me. That's a form of laziness, actually. Being self-obsessed and self-conscious, fearful, a dread of things. Anxiety is part of that syndrome, isn't it? Judgmental, critical of others who are different from you, feeling that you're, well, they might be this, they might be that. I feel a bit sorry for them because they'd be much better if they were like me. greedy, lazy, or another emotion. So there you go. Enough to talk about. So if you go off on your own, try to access the stuff or do some reflection. And if you are in a group, then can you just discuss that idea of when is a bad emotion good? Can anger ever be good? Are there other emotions that it's important that you feel them even though they're negative? Because it's complex. It is complex. It's not straightforward. And then it's getting late, but let's take you to 10 past, which gives you, according to me, 14 minutes. And if you like, Alexis, you can join a group and I'll take charge of this and let you know when you've all got a minute and bring you back in. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah? Okay. Okay. So, yes, I think it is. Okay, so being aware of whether you're unmuting or not, what did we discover? Was there any disagreements over whether emotions were destructive or constructive? Or what did you come up with when you discussed that? Susan's giggling. Come on, let's hear from Susan.
Hello.
Hello, Susan.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
We didn't cover that topic. We just jumped right in.
Okay.
We shared. So I shared my irritation. My irritation thing. The sand in my gullet. Scratchy annoyance, and how I noticed that and how I'm working with it. Yeah. So we talked about how we were feeling, the emotions that arose for us, anger, anxiety and fear. We talked about, and how. I guess what I would say for myself is I've been working on what antidote works the best with my mind,
Right.
And so I look at that so it feels authentically coming from within myself, and then I can it becomes juicy and I can work with it,
Good.
It's not a affirmation it's a whole thing.
It comes from within you, as you said. So then it works. That's a very good point. Yeah. Okay. That was a nice summary. I'm glad you jumped right in there. You're obviously all practitioners and you're all just, oh, I know this.
We don't really have parachutes, We're all just like
drowning.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's just interesting right now because it's such a rich environment. There are so many stressors in general.
Yeah.
And it gives us a lot of material to work with, a lot.
Yeah, it's true. It's like when I look at these, factors and compare it to the monastic situation, they're in their little monastery. And as I said, their distracting narration will be, perhaps a few little dirty pictures going around or something like
right. Yeah.
Such innocence, really. Whereas if you think of what is out there now it blows your mind. We've got a lot to work on, a lot to work with.
Yeah, it's juicy.
It is juicy, but I think also if you kind of look at them and you put them under these umbrellas, you can see that they're similar things.
Right.
Like whether it's a little dirty picture coming round, the nature of the mind will be agitated in the same way as some kind of form that's out there for a teenager now. It's, It's the same as if you've got strong desire because you're very wealthy and strong desire if you're poor, the objects are different, but the experience is the same.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's always interesting, wherever you are in society. And we sometimes think, oh, all these people, they live such a simple, contented life, but they're longing to have our complicated lives. They're longing for it, They could jump on a plane and drop right parachute in. They would. Little do they know.
Do you know what, Andy? This is a little bit off topic, but recently I thought I'll
Oh, there you are. Okay.
hello, sorry, a little bit off topic, but just to bridge those thoughts there, I decided to be a crane operator, so I did my CSCS card. I'm back to tutoring now, so but anyway, while I was flying with this mad idea and doing this course, the tutor was a saying, with COVID, people are changing their careers, and he said he had this pilot, highfalutin pilot, everything he wanted in the world. And he said all he did every morning was watch the postman and think, that's what I want to do. I just want to be a postman. And he gave his job up. I don't know what he is now. It just goes to show you, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? And it's that whole also grass is greener.
Yes.
It's always out there. It's always out there. Very, very few people live with simple contentment. They do, but it's uncommon. And if you put desire their way, they might have been living contentedly for a long time, but you put something in their path and they want it. They think it will be better.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some unusual stories. We had this woman who lived in the Yorkshire moors in this very simple cottage, and she lived there forever in a kind of very old-fashioned way with, no electricity. And do you know that story?
Hannah?
That's it. And eventually they kind of got hold of her and did a story about her, but she wasn't interested, maybe because she was at a certain age and, she had that wisdom. But that's unusual, very unusual. Yeah.
She'd go down, wouldn't she, to the river with a bucket, past the cows in all the frost with, a great granddad's coats on and all of this. Yeah.
Each one of us is sitting there going, oh, that sounds lovely, because you do. And I bet it was hard work, really hard work. But there's like, oh, how idyllic, how rural, we've got all this going on, haven't we? Okay, let's go to somebody else, maybe from the other group. I don't know what groups you're talking from. Time is moving on, but let's have any more comments that are there. They can be questions, whatever you want. Anybody else?
I just want to share something that made me chuckle. Alexis mentioned.
Who was talking?
Corley.
Oh, Corley. Come on, Corley. I haven't heard from you. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. So it comes from Alexis, who shared that we can sort of see our emotions like a burp, just sort of this fleeting, sensation that we don't need to try to cling or attach ourselves to, but just to let come up like it does and let go like a bird does. That really resonated with me. I liked it.
Yeah. Release wind, one way or the other.
It depends on which emotion you're letting go of, right?
Yeah. So you're all practitioners. So there's nobody here who hasn't heard this before and hasn't engaged with working with it. Yeah. So that's useful for me to know for next week. Yeah. What about purification while we're all together before I go? Next week is the last of this little series. I think I'm coming back in March for something. I can't remember. But for this, what about purification? Do you know a lot about purification practices?
Vajrasattva,
Vajrasattva.
Roger Sattva, yes.
my main boy.
Your main man.
Yeah.
Or ours.
And the 4 R's. Yeah, well, we could do maybe just look at that, because I think purification is a really helpful ritualistic aspect of Tibetan Buddhism, you know, that uses visualization. For me, it ties in with kind of Jungian ideas of how we use imagery and how effective that is. So, okay. Well, let's leave it there. We haven't got long. Maybe you can mute yourselves and we'll just do a little meditation to end. Is that okay? Great. So just again, some deep breaths. Let the tensions in your body release. And it might be useful to just turn your attention to something that came up in the teachings or in your discussion, and you thought, well, there was a tiny light bulb moment, or something new, or perhaps an identification of an emotion. Maybe something you've been working with and you realize, actually, you've done really well, and it's not so dominant anymore. So just take your mind to that work with topic this evening and just focus on that one important aspect of learning. And then before we end the meditation, just clarify, really clear in your mind. Are there any actions? Are there any meditations? Is there anything that you can do to support you in that bit of learning? And really do not forget to congratulate yourself, to give yourself a mental pat on the back for engaging, for managing the ego, and for increasing your constructive emotions. And be clear on either that takeaway or something else that you think, yeah, I came for this, and this is what I'm taking away. As we're all practitioners, we can dedicate that merit that we've done together today, sharing the Dharma, working on our minds, communicating with our Sangha. and generating a really wholesome emotion of thanks and happiness that's going to nourish you for the rest of the day, maybe the rest of the week. And end your meditation. Lovely. Well, as I said, we've got one more week next week. If anything comes up, or you've got anything now that you would like addressed that we haven't addressed so far, 4 weeks is, it's not a long course, but hopefully you've got what you came for. But if there's something that you think, oh, I'd like more on that, apart from what we've just discussed, let me know. And if you think about it early in the week, give me time. I guess through Venerable Dondra, yeah?
Yes.
He would email me.
Mm-hmm.
Something comes up, okay? So have a lovely day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are. Liverpool.